Good afternoon and welcome to one more webinar from Telric India. We normally do these webinars almost every Thursday of a week, every month at 12 p.m. India Standard Time. It looks like we have some friends from overseas also this time. So we have a couple of we change this timing so that we can accommodate our friends in Singapore, Hong Kong, because I think it's close to 3 p.m. there or 2:30 p.m. there. So it makes it easy for them also to join. We used to do it at 3 p.m. India Standard Time. That would have been a little late for our friends over there. So we changed the timings. If you are new, please go over to telrichelper.net. The link is posted on your chat window, telrichelper.net. We have already produced the schedule, or we have put up the schedule for January and February. So this is the last one for January, and we'll come back in February for two more webinars. So today we're going to be talking about JavaScript task runners. There's something unusual naming maybe, but yeah, this is what is very popular nowadays when it comes to modern web development. The task runners, as they call them, in a simple term or in a layman's term, task runners are nothing but build system, or it's more categorically called as JavaScript build system or client-side build system. Right now, you want to build your client assets like CSS or JavaScript or image compression, minification, all those kind of things that you do that is required for your client-side related stuff. You use these to kind of automate them. So today we're going to be looking at two things. One is Gulp, another one is Grunt. These are very popular build systems or task runners, as they call. A little bit about myself. My name is Lohit Jian. I work as a developer evangelist or technical evangelist at Telerik in India. I'm also a Microsoft MVP in the area of Visual Studio and development technologies. That's my Twitter handle, and those two are my kashypas.com is my personal website. That's where I mostly write on ASP.NET related stuff. About.me/Kashyapa. So if you want to know more about me and then want to get some coordinates about me, so you can go there. And www.telerik.com, telerik.com. That's our global site, Telerik global website. You can just go there and then figure out, what we do, what do we give you in terms of products or software. So bunch of things that we do at Telerik. So most probably one of the other needs of your projects or requirements of your project can be met by Telerik. So go take a look at that. So now, kind of a brief agenda. Web development task. What is a task runner? Why would you use it? Gulp and Grunt. So that is the things going forward. So let's talk about the first one, the web development task, right? So I'm not sure how many of you go all the way, to the deployment side. If you are a developer, mostly what you do in your day-to-day job is you come in, you go to your source control, get the latest, you change a feature, or you add a feature, or you change a module, you add a module, and you check it in, right? And then of course that's it, you're done with that. But there are much more things that happen after your check-ins, right? So that's called as the build. So if you're building a web application, what you need is you need a package, or you need a distribution package of your web application. What does a web application contain? It contains a bunch of HTML, it contains the JavaScript, it contains the CSS. So I need to package them in a manner which is optimized for production deployment, right? You cannot just go a JavaScript file which is not minified, which has a lot of white spaces. Same thing with CSS. So typically it's a coding practice, or it's a development practice that if you in your CSS files, you typically leave spaces between one rule to the another rule, or you add some comments in between and all those things. So you have a lot of white spaces, and those white spaces do add up to the weight of your page or the size of the page, right? So it's a best practice. Or if you go and then talk to any build system or build engineers, they will say like, oh, your JavaScript file should be minified, your JavaScript file should be concatenated, or it's kind of you bundle. It's called as a bundling. If you have 3 JavaScript file, you can bundle all 3 into one JavaScript file, minify it, and then so that your web application will not make 3 HTTP calls, rather it makes only one HTTP call. Same case with CSS, right? You should minify your CSS, and then you should use the minified CSS on the production system. Never use unminified CSS files. Or you may have your TypeScript, right? Your TypeScript is very popular. I like TypeScript because it's a superset of the JavaScript, and then I get to do the way I write code in a C# or object-oriented programming languages. So I can create a class, I can create a module, I can create a interface, all these modularity I can bring into JavaScript, but the TypeScript is not understood by the browser. So during my development time, I may be writing a TypeScript based code, but if it has to run on a browser, I need that TypeScript to be converted into ECMAScript 5, or the standard, the today's JavaScript standard, which is ECMAScript 5 or ES5 as it popularly known as. So you need somebody who understands TypeScript and then convert that into ES5 code, right? So that's TypeScript compiler. So once you finish your coding and you check it in the build system, you need all these guys. You need somebody who understands a SASS file and convert that into CSS, because SASS is very cool actually. You will use variables, you will use mixins, you will use importing, all these concepts to create a style sheet, and you call that as a SASS file or SCSS file, .scss. But that SCSS is not understood by the browser, or for that matter, if you're not heard of this, there's another technology called as LESS, LESS, right? Same concept but two different flavors. But the point is, if you are creating a SASS style sheet or if you're creating a LESS style sheet, that's not understood by the browser. The browser understands only one thing, and that is .css, right? People or modern web development is using this concept of SASS or this concept of LESS or this concept of TypeScript because they want, our development needs to be modular. Our development needs to be kind of optimized in terms of how we start coding or how we use things and all those things. So in the build system, you need somebody who can take a SASS, convert it into CSS, who can take a LESS file, convert it into CSS, can take a JavaScript file, minify it, lint it. Linting is nothing but making sure you follow the best practice of JavaScript coding. For example, you should use useStrict command at the top, directive at the top, and then every statement should be ended. You should end every statement using a semicolon. So all these things are called as linting, or checking, making sure that you're writing the best JavaScript or using the best practices of the JavaScript. So that's something that you do in the a web development. If you are a developer who has been just doing go, let's me write code, check it in, and then let's go home, I urge you to go and then see what happens further. What happens after my check-in, who is doing the build, how is the build done, so who is directing this build, right? There has to be somebody who tells like, hey, now take a JavaScript, convert it like this, now take a style sheet, convert it like this, now take a TypeScript, convert it like. So where is that, who has written that, right? Those kind of things is what you will need to understand to actually know the full spectrum of your development. So what tasks do you perform for deployment? As I said, compile SASS to CSS, compile LESS to CSS, concatenating or JavaScript, minifying the JavaScript, testing your code. So I can actually, as part of my build, run a test for my JavaScript. If I return a JavaScript function, I can write test scripts for that. It is actually advised for you to come out and then do the TDD kind of, or the test driven development for your JavaScripts too. Write test scripts for your JavaScript that you're writing, right? So linting your code, linting is nothing but, I come from Microsoft Word, and then we have a cool tool called as Style Cop, or I have a tool called as FX Cop, which basically checks my the C# codes, and looks for whether I'm following the development patterns defined by the C# guys, right? There is a very specific things that you should do as a C# developer, like the class name should be starting with a capital letter, the camel casing, the variables should be like this, like that, so interface should be named with I. So there are certain best practice rules available. So the FX Corp or the Style Corp do take care of that. Similarly, when we are doing JavaScript, there is JS lint, or JavaScript linting. It will catch all the errors that you are doing during your development time itself, right? Typically the browsers throw up the errors when your code is running. Instead, if you use a JS lint during your development time, those things can be caught. So typically these are some of the tasks. You see that I put a 3 ellipses, meaning there are a bunch of other things that you will be doing. But for now, what we do is basically these are some of the typical mundane tasks that you will have to go through during a deployment. So what are they? What are the build systems or the task runners, right? So basically build systems or task runners are nothing but they're a collection of tasks. For example, pick up all the less files in the project and convert that into CSS. That's a task, right? Every time you go and then make a change to the less file, that change needs to be converted into a CSS. So what do? You will have to write a task for that. Plus these are automated repetitive work, so you will be changing your less file maybe every day in and day out, right? You will be writing your JavaScripts day in and day out. You'll be writing CoffeeScripts day in and day out in your project. When you're doing that, the moment you change something in a TypeScript file, in order to check that, like, I want to go quickly run it on a browser and see that your TypeScript or your less script needs to be converted into the CSS or the JavaScript. So this is repetitive work. But this repetitive work needs to be automated. You should not be doing it. The moment you make a change, let somebody go do this for you. So that somebody is the build system. That somebody is the task runner, right? So these are also called as task runners. So what are the things that make up the modern front end workflow? This is a good I picked it up from some slide that I was going through on the in the internet. So they have put it very good. Modern front end workflows. So gone are the days where you did everything in the Visual Studio. I come from the Microsoft world, so I'm going to take that analogy here. So Visual Studio is one tool or one IDE that we use for coding, that we use for testing, that we use for packaging, that we use for deployment. It's just single IDE where we sit and then we used to do everything, right? But gone are the days for doing this. The open source world is completely command line. They're like, go to the command line, type something, and then that's it. It just starts pretty much doing things on its own. It's automated, it's repetitive. So some of the things that make up this modern front end workflow is three things. One is the package managers. So you might have heard about Bower, you might have heard about NPM, the node package manager. Bower is a very popular registry for client-side JavaScript libraries. NPM is the package manager or the registry for node-related modules. And then there are certain preprocessors. For example, SASS. There is a SASS preprocessor. It understands how to read a SASS file and convert that into a CSS file. Yeah, there are less preprocessors. So meaning that's a less compiler which understands the less file or a less style sheet and converts that into CSS, cascading style sheet. Similarly, there is a TypeScript compiler which understands TypeScript code, and he will be able to convert that TypeScript code into ECMAScript 5 JavaScript. Then comes the task runners or the build tools. So what these task runners and build tools do is they'll help you to kind of use all these preprocessors, chain them. For example, I want to take all my JavaScripts, minify all my JavaScript, concatenate all my JavaScripts, and then output a single file known as app.min.js. Yes, the task runner, the build tools, they will be able to help you do that. So there are certain preprocessors, there are certain package managers which you can use and then write a task, chain them, and then you will be able to do that. So the Gulp, Grunt allow you to write those kind of tasks. So when it comes to these three things, what are the what are the points under these three main workflow components? As I said, package managers, Bower and NPM is very popular for web. Any client-side JavaScript UI libraries, you will use Bower to bring it, and then there will be a bower.json file or a configuration file where you say like, hey, I depend on so and so libraries. So you can just go and say Bower install, and then Bower reads that configuration file and will be able to install everything. Similarly, node package manager. So some of these Gulp and Grunt have what is known as plugins or add-ons, right? So Gulp is the main runner, but the community has gone ahead and then written a lot of plugins around Gulp. So for example, if I want to minify my JavaScript file, yeah, there is a plugin which says minify CSS, Gulp minify CSS plugin. So you can go to Node and say, hey Node, install Gulp minify, or there is a renaming. So at build time, I may have created one.js file, but I can rename it to app.js at the build time, right? Those kind of things are available in npm and jQuery, Kendo UI. All these client-side JavaScript libraries can be installed using Bower Package Manager. So that's the package manager things for you. Coming to the preprocessors, you have CSS preprocessors like SASS processor, LESS processor, then there is JavaScript, then there is HTML. Then comes the task runners or the build tool. So we are today looking at Gulp and Grunt, which are very popular in the open source world. So let's Gulp is also known as a streaming build system, because what it does is it uses streaming, or it uses streams to work on any task. Any task is basically a stream until unless you finish the task. So you start, so you read a file, so that is a stream. On that stream you go ahead and then do all the things like minify, rename, concatenate, blah blah blah. So all those things, it is done on the stream, right? So finally, when you're done, you'll say, okay, now I'm done, just finish the task. That's when it outputs the finished file. So this is considered little better, a little performant, because it is using streams compared to the Grunt. Grunt works on a temporary files basis, so it writes temporary files to the disk and then uses that to finish its task. So that's why Gulp is also known as streaming build system. So they call, if you go to gulpjs.com, they say, like, automate your task easily with gulp.js, and that's the what do you call, mascot, or the logo of gulp.js. I'm not sure why it was kept it like that, but I can assume, like, the word gulp means, you're kind of taking a lot of juice inside you. So that's why that's a juice can with a straw there. I can just predict that, that is why they called it as gulp.js, and this is the logo, right? So let's quickly start something with Gulp. So what I've done is I've already gone ahead and then installed Gulp on my system. So first, you will need to have Node.js installed on your machines. So let me go and then change certain properties here, and font. Okay, this should be a little better for you guys to see that. So what I've done is, so if you go to gulpjs.com, so let me bring it up. So the site is gulpjs.com, and in order to install it, if you see here, it just takes you to the GitHub. So because it's open source, it's available on the GitHub. It says, hey, install Gulp globally. So you will have to do npm install hyphen global Gulp. So -g or -g is basically, install it globally. And you can also install it in your project dev dependencies. You can say npm install --save -dev Gulp. So that means now you are telling that your project needs Gulp as a dependency, so npm will be able to get you that. And then you start creating your Gulp file.js at the root of your project, and this is as simple as it can get. You just say require Gulp, and you start writing your task, and then inside the task is where you start chaining your specific tasks, and you can pretty much start doing anything that you want. So there are certain things that you will need to understand. So there is this src. So this is nothing but I will tell Gulp to pick up certain source files. So there is a pattern that we can say, like, star.js. So that means pick up any JavaScript file from a path and then use that as a source. So that and then that creates a stream, and then on that stream we'll start using other plugins like rename, concat, minify, HTML, minification, or CSS minification. Bunch of things can be done. Dot watch is a special task that Gulp provides, wherein I can tell Gulp to watch certain changes in my application. So meaning I can write a task in such a way to tell Gulp that, hey, keep looking out for JavaScript changes. If any time during my development time a JavaScript file has a change, I want you to run that particular task where I convert the JavaScript TypeScript into JavaScript or whatever. If there is a change for SASS file, I want you to run this task where you pick up the SASS file and then convert that into a CSS file. So the watch is for your development. Instead of running gulp command every time you make a change, let gulp automatically pick it up. So you write a watch. So we'll be seeing all these things. The destination is nothing but once I'm done, for example, I picked up the SASS file, I converted that into the CSS file. So where should I now write a physical file, right? The .css file, where should it go? So you are giving a destination path to that. And then, as I said, there are a bunch of available plugins here. So if you can go here to if you click on this main website, so it's taking me to gulpjs.com/plugins, and bunch of plugins are available. All helpful plugins that you need: renaming, minification, concatenating, browser sync, you name it. So all those things are available. I'm not sure why it's not coming up. Okay, yeah, there we go. So gulp babel, gulp closure, gulp css lint. So there we go. So the css lint is all about, it will actually check if you have written the right css or not, right? Then Gulf coffee lint, so CoffeeScript, so compile CoffeeScript file. So if you are a CoffeeScript guy and you want to convert CoffeeScript into JavaScript, well, yeah, you can use this particular preprocessor to use the coffee files and then convert that into a JavaScript file. So gulp concat, so concatenate the file. So I have 3 JavaScript files. I want to concatenate everything and create a single file. Yeah, I can use this particular plugin. So what I'm going to do now is I've already installed Node on my system. I've already installed Gulp on my system. I did the npm install -g gulp, so it's available already. So I've created a little folder here, gulp demos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a text editor. So the focus I'm going to do now, or my main focus now, is going to be talking about this build system. Don't worry about the, I'm not going to build a website I'm not going to build a full-fledged website. Rather, I'm going to focus on certain aspects of web development here, and then how Gulp solves that thing. So here is my text editor, right? So now what I can do is I can come in here and then say, like, add a new file, and I will say I need a package.json. And then here I can so this is how you create a package.json. So I can say, like, this is a Gulp demos app, and then I can say version is let's call it as 1.0.0, and then my dependencies is where I'll come back here. So of course I need Gulp, so I can say, like, hey, I need Gulp. So by the way, I'm using Visual Studio Code, fantastic text editor from Microsoft. Notice here it can do an auto completion even in my package.json. So that's why I like this Visual Studio Code. It can give me IntelliSense. I don't have to remember what I need. So now what I'm going to do is create a folder here. Or no, let me create an index.html. Then I'm going to create a JS folder. Then I'm going to create, oh, I created a file, sorry. Let's delete this guy. I'm going to create a folder called as SASS. I'm going to create a folder called as, where is it creating? Not there. I'm going to create a folder called less. Then I'm going to create a folder called as JS, right? And in the index.html, I'm going to come back here and then add a doc type HTML, then say HTML, then we'll have a head, then we'll have a body, right? Let's keep it at here. So maybe I'll add a title as Gulp demo app, and we'll come back and then start adding one by one. So now what I'm going to do is first in the package.json, I'm going to say, hey, I need gulp to be installed on this one, right? So let's go to command line and then we'll say npm install. What npm will do is it's going to look at my package.json. Couldn't read dependencies. Where have I kept this? Gulp demos. Yes, please include the following with any. Oh, there's no space there. Sorry about that. So now what has happened is, I've created a package.json. Invalid version. I know. I think we gotta say this. Come on. Okay. Don't worry about that. So that's not of the importance. I keep forgetting what should be the there we go. So now what it is doing is, noting in the background I get a node underscore modules folder, and now it is going and then getting me the gulp because I said the dependency is a gulp. So now I'm getting gulp now. So let's give it a moment and then we will, okay, by the time, yeah, I think it is done now. So first thing that what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create a SAS file now, just a simple example. You don't want to see me typing, so I'm going to say SAS, and I will say my styles dot SCSS. That's how it is known as, and this is SAS for you. So notice here I'm doing a dollar font stack, right? And then dollar primary color. So now I can go ahead and then do anywhere I want. So my primary color is what? Is a maroon that has been defined there. So now I can come in here and then say H1 color is equal to dollar primary color, right? So then maybe I have H5 which I can say color is equal to dollar primary color. So what you're getting a benefit here is, what if your primary color changes tomorrow because your customer comes and says like, hey, I don't want maroon but I want red? Well, there you go. So now instead of replacing 100 places your primary color which was previously maroon and now it is red, you're changing it in one place, and then now I can get a SAS preprocessor and then say like, hey, take this SCSS file, give me a CSS file, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder here in front, and then I'm going to say this is CSS, and I'm going to create one more folder here called as less. Just I'm kind of showcasing what are the things you can do. So I'll say this is less. Oh, there's already a folder called less. So let's add a new file here, and I will say another style dot less, and let me paste a simple less. This is how less will look like. There you go. So this is a less code. So the difference between less and then SAS is less uses at the rate, and then the CSS uses, or the SAS uses the dollar signature. So it's up to you whichever way you want to do it. So now what I want to do is, in the index.html, I cannot use the SAS or a less file, right? So I want link href css slash my styles.css, and then I also want css slash what did we name our less thing as? It's another style.css. So I want it like this. Mind you, there is nothing inside CSS now, right? So that's where the gulp, the task runner comes into picture now. So what I've done now is I'm setting up my initial things, right? So we'll get to the JavaScript also. First, let's finish this style sheet thingy. So now I'm going to go in and then create a file at the root of my project, and then it has to be named as gulpfile.js, correct? So now there are three parts to gulpfile.js. First is required modules, or um, we call it as requires, or you can say like dependent modules, and then you have tasks, and then you have to say what is the default task. right? These are the three things that you need inside a gulp file. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say where gulp is equal to require, and I will say this is going to be gulp, right? So now gulp alone cannot help me. What gulp can help me is I can come in here and then say, like, gulp dot task, and then I can name any task. I can say task 1, and then I can write a function. So let me quickly show you a simple stuff. So I can say task 1 fired, right? So now I can actually go to a command line, and then I can say gulp task 1. Remember? Oh, sorry, there's a spelling mistake, so it has to be task 1. So I can just come back here and then say, like, hey, gulp task 1. You will notice that it ran my task 1. You see this? It says task 1 fired, right? So that is what a gulp is all about. It, whatever task that you give it to gulp, it starts running it. So now let's start doing some real cool stuff. Okay, so first thing is I'm going to rename this, and then I'm going to say SASS task. So meaning convert any SASS files in the project to CSS. So that's what this SASS task is all about, right? So you can actually do like this: console dot log converting, or you can, let's say, like, SASS to CSS, just to, just a fun aspect of it. But in order to convert the SASS files into a CSS file, well, gulp cannot do that, right? You need to go back to gulp plugin. So as you can see, currently there are 2,141 tasks or plugins available for the gulp. So I can say gulp SASS. There we go, gulp plugin for SASS. So let me go into that. So what do they say? It is actually taking you to npmjs.org because it is a node module. So you need to install this node module. So what I can do is I can go to the package.json and then say, like, hey, you know what? I need gulp hyphen SASS. And I need that. Okay, so now if I come back to my command line and then I do npm install, it will see that I need gulp SASS, and then he will go ahead and then install everything, right? So just to cut down on the time, I'm going to directly say, hey, I need gulp SASS. So it's going to go to npm and then give me the gulp SASS particular plugin. Now once I have included gulp SASS plugin into my project folder, then I can start writing a cool trick, or no, it's a cool task wherein I can say, like, hey, you know what, in my project there may be certain SASS files, go pick them up, convert that into CSS file, and then I want you to place it in CSS folder, and we should be done. So it's doing a post install now. Any moment we should be done. Okay, we'll come back to that. So let's go back to the gulp file. So now in order to use, I did not show you guys this. So this is the node module, or so this is the gulp SASS npm js page on the npm js. So how do you use it, right? It says, hey, first include gulp, then include gulp SASS, then write a task. Usually we keep it like this, so we to make clear to everybody who's reading that hey, this is a SASS task, right? Meaning it's going to pick up all the SASS, and then it's going to convert that into a CSS file. And notice here, it is only 3 lines. You need to first pick up all the SASS files that you have in your project. And this is the interesting thing about gulp. It's a pipeline. It's, you keep passing to the pipe, from one pipe to another pipe, you keep passing the stream. It's not a physical file, but rather it's all in-memory streams, and then it just keeps passing it together. So what you did was you said, like, hey, pick up all the SASS files in front of the SASS folder and then call the SASS preprocessor. So this include line, or the require line, tells that I need SASS preprocessor now. Okay, so I'm just saying SASS, and then where should I dump the file, right? I'm saying, okay, go ahead, put it into a destination called as .css. So let's do that now. By this time, I think there we go. Even the node has finished putting the gulp SASS. So now I can just go to this file and then in fact I can copy complete stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna say copy this, and I'm gonna just add one aspect here, or just to make sure we know what is happening. So in front of my so where is the gulp file? Gulp file is in the root of my project. So in front of the root I have a folder called as SASS, and then it may contain SCSS file. So let me expand. So there you go, it's my styles.scss. So I'm saying pick up any SCSS file in any hierarchy inside SASS, and then convert that into SAS. So one another thing that I need to add is I need to say SAS is equal to require, and I just have to say gulp hyphen SAS, right? So now as you can see here, it just says, hey, this is what it is. And in the destination I have said in the root I have a CSS folder. I want you to go place this here. So I'm going to expand this CSS folder, and now I'm going to come back here to command line. Let me just kind of minimize it. So I will say gulp SAS, and there we go. You see this here? It said it has ran the SAS to CSS, and take a look at this. I got mystyles.css. So let's take a look at what does mystyles.css contain. Well, let me put it side by side, and here is your, on the right hand side you see the SAS file, on the left hand side you see the CSS file. So that's what the CSS or the SAS preprocessor will be able to do. Take this particular file which is a SAS and convert that into CSS. So notice here, wherever you had dollar primary color, that has been converted into the actual value. What was the actual value? The actual value of dollar primary color is red, so that has been converted into red. Now anytime if your customer comes in and says like, hey, I don't want red, I can what I want to do is I want maybe light blue, right? That's my primary color, right? So now again if I come back here to this and say gulp SAS, there we go. Did you see on the background the editor actually changed to light blue, or the file is now showing light blue. So that's what you get with the command line thing. There is a question which says gulp task can only be run using command line. Well, understand what section of your or what point of your development I'm talking about. I'm talking about your development, or sorry, deployment, right? So typically a deployment server or a build server, you do not have any manual intervention. You kick off a particular build script at a particular time of the day, and then you don't need some developer sitting there to say like, okay, yes, no, you don't do that. So that is why most of these build task runners or build systems are command line, so that on a build server I can just kick it off, saying like, hey, every day at 9 p.m. I want you to run this task called gulp. And then once gulp task is done, I want you to run a task to zip it up, and then I want to run a task to put it onto your web server. Done. By the time your testing team comes up next day morning like 9 a.m., they have previous day's build set up ready for testing. That's how you got to do it. Even if you're doing a 1-page web application, even if you're doing a 5-page application, or you're doing a 100-page application, the first thing you should be taking care of is package your deployment. I used to write build scripts and then make sure that every time some developer said like he has finished this work, he should have run that particular build script on his machine and make sure it runs clean, and then it does all the necessary things, and then he goes ahead. Okay, so that's what it is. So let's go get going. So I'm gonna I already created a less file now. So in this less file now, what you need is you need another plugin. That plugin will be known as gulp less, right? So there you go. So this is gulp less. So you will need to use the gulp less, and let me do this. So I'm gonna go here to my package.json, and then I will say like, hey, I need gulp less, and so why I am putting into the package.json, because if tomorrow somebody in your team comes into your project and he has to get going, all he has to do is just run this package npm install, and then npm reads this particular dependencies, and then he will install it for him in his folders, and then he can just get going, right? So I'm going to say npm install gulp less, and let me go ahead and then take a look at what does less says. So less says you need to include these two things. What is one is the gulp less, and then another one is the path, and then this is how you write a the less task, right? So I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to go to gulp file, and in front after the SASS I'm going to do this, and what I will do is I'm going to take this guy, go all the way up and put it here, and then take this guy out and put this guy here, right? And let's get clean, and then this is less, this is the less thing. So I can do like, hey, I want you to convert the less into CSS now. So I have a LESS folder, and then I'm saying like, take everything. So less preprocessor has a different syntax. It needs to know the path. So what I'm doing is the current dir name / less, and then include all the files. Different plugins have their own have their own syntaxes, so you just need to know that. So I'm going to say the destination is / CSS, the root folder, right? So now we have the npm has installed the gulp less. Now I can come back here, and then I can say like, I want you to run gulp a task named less. Now in our CSS folder we will see another style.css coming up, right? So it has ran the less to CSS pre-processing, and there we go. So let me put this side by side, and here is my less file on the right hand side, and the left hand side you see the CSS thing. So let me change maybe BG color to Gainsborough. It's a variant of white or gray, they call it. So now if I come back here and I do gulp less, you will see that it goes ahead and then creates the CSS file for that. It went and it took the less and then did that. So now let's come back to the the JavaScript file, sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say one.js, and just to prove a point I'm going to say console.log, this is one.js, and I'm going to put a lot of spaces in between, and I will say console.log, this is a log statement, right? And then I'm going to say, hey, add one more, let's call it as 2.js, and I will say, or let me copy this, and I'm going to say this is 2.js, and this is a second log statement or whatever it is. So that's not the point. Don't worry about why I'm just putting this. There's a point I'm trying to prove here, that is, if you notice here I have a lot of white spaces, I have everything. So typically you need to minify this. Typically you need to concatenate 1.js and 2.js into one single JavaScript file and then use that one, right? So for doing that, what we will do is we'll need to use a couple of things here. One is called as gulp rename. So let me show you that. So there's this concept called as gulp rename. So meaning, hey, take all the files, rename that into something else. And then there is a concept of uglify. So this is nothing but, for in a layman's terms, minify. Minify files with uglify.js. So that's the thing. And then I need to concatenate JS1 and JS2. So I need another plugin called as gulp concat. So we need rename, we need gulp uglify, we need gulp concat. So let's go ahead and then quickly put that into our package.json. So I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to say gulp rename, and I'm going to say I need gulp uglify, and I need gulp concat, right? And I'm going to go ahead and then install all those things now. Npm Come on, stop it. I typed a miss. Okay. So I'm going to say npm install gulp rename gulp concat gulp uglify. So this will go ahead and then install it. By that time, let's start writing the JavaScript related tasks. So let's go to gulp.js file, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say gulp. So we are already at the 50th minute mark. So let's get going fast. So I'm going to say gulp.task, and I will call this task name as scripts. It's usually a practice that we all do like this, so that we know what we are doing here. So you will do this way, and let me quickly do a console.log, and I will say JS task, right? So now what I need to do is first I need to say where it can find the JavaScript file. So basically it has to find in JS folder all the JavaScript that it can find, right? So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe this into concat. I want to what do you call I want to concatenate 1.js 2.js into a file known as app.js. Assume this is the name, sorry, not pipe. After pipe I'll need to say concat, and notice here my editor says, hey, I don't know what do you mean by concat. So we need to first go ahead and then include all these guys now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say concat, or instead of you not seeing me typing, I already have it done, so I'll just get it. So there you go. I said, hey, give me rename, give me uglify, give me a concat, right? So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to concatenate all the JavaScript that I have into one file called as app.js. Once the concatenation is done, I'm going to say I want this to be uglified, meaning minify it. I don't know why they call it as uglify, but I'm saying, like, hey, I want you to minify that, right? Then all I need to do is I want to say pipe gulp dot destination. Where should we put this? Let's put this. I'm going to create a new folder now in front of gulp demo, and then I will say app, and I want this inside app.js. Okay, so I'm going to say gulp, the destination is app.js, right? We could have done the same thing with CSS also. We could have said, like, hey, I want you to put it inside apps, CSS, or whatever. So it's up to you. So now what I've done is I've created a JavaScript task. I've told read all the JavaScripts in the folder. And then I want you to convert that into concatenate that into a single file called app.js, uglify or minify that app.js, and then put it into this folder called app/js, right? So by this time our npm has installed everybody. So I will say gulp. So let me show you this. Let me have this on the left hand side. You can see there is an app folder. Keep looking for that. So I'm going to now run this, and it is done. Actually, it is that fast. So let's see this. So there we go. So we have only one file now. Instead of two files, it has given me only one file now, right? I concatenated everything, and then take a look at this. This is what we mean by minification. It removes out all the white spaces, and take a look at this. This is 1.js, this is a log statement, this is 2.js, this is a second statement. These were in two different files. Now it has come back to one single file, right? So now quickly what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to index.html. I got my CSS, my style.css, another styles.css. I'm going to go get the scripts. Script src is equal to where is this? This is an app/js/app.js. Then I'm going to say hello world, right? So let me quickly run this guy. And there you go. So remember, I think one of the styles had put it as primary color as light blue or whatever it is. And now if I open up my console and refresh, you will see the console.log that is there. Take a look at this. This is 1.js, this is a log statement, this is 2.js, this is a second log statement, right? That is what the files had it. So everything that you need is there in the file. Now, this is fine, but if I make a change now into, let's say, okay, let me show you this. Let me start that particular index.html. So now the hello world that you're seeing there, I'm gonna go change my SASS file, mystyle.css, to the primary color. I want to make it maroon back, right? But now if I come back and then refresh my page, well, I don't get the maroon. That's because, well, you never converted your changes in the SASS to what do you call CSS file. So now you have to again come back here and then run gulp sass, right? So now it goes ahead and then generates the CSS file. Now I can come back and F5, and then there I get the maroon color for my that particular whatever text you have, right? Well, this is fine, but every time I cannot keep on doing gulp sass or gulp less or gulp JS file, right? So what we can do is gulp has a mechanism of default task. I can come back here to my gulp file and then say like, hey, gulp dot task, you will have a default task, and what you depend on is you depend on sass task, you depend on less task, and you depend on scripts task, right? Now I don't have to do anything. I just have to come back here and then do gulp, and he picks up the default task, and he knows that, hey, I need to run a SASS, I need to run a less, and I need to run a JS, right? So he does everything for me. I don't have to do it. This is fine, but wouldn't it be nice if I could do some sort of watch, meaning I want gulp to keep looking out for changes, and then he automatically should do that, right? So we have a concept of what we call as a gulp watch. So let me show you that. So I can come in here and then I can say like, I can write a new gulp does task, watch it, and then what you need to do is you will need to come back here and then say, hey gulp, I need you to watch out for any SASS changes, and if you find a change, I want you to call the SASS task, right? And then similarly, I want you to watch for less and look out for any less, and call the less task, right? And I can come back here to JS and start at JS, and then I can say call the scripts task. Now here is the fun part. I can come in here and then put this watch as a task here, right? Now what happens is I can come in here and then I can say gulp. Notice here the command prompt is waiting. It is not returned back. So that means the gulp is now watching. So let's do something. I'm gonna keep this guy here. I'm gonna keep this guy. Need to resize this guy. Okay, I'm gonna keep this hello world here. I'm gonna keep the command window here. Keep noticing the command window, right? I'm gonna go back to maybe one of the SASS files, right? Remember the hello world is maroon now. So I'm gonna go change it to red, and I'm gonna just click on save. It's still not saved. Notice here there is a tick mark here, or it says like one change in the files, right? So I have not saved it yet. Keep a eye on the command window. I'm gonna do Control yes now. Notice what happened here. It said starting SASS. Why? Because it figured out that there's a change in the SASS. Now I just have to come back to the browser and then do an F5. I get the change. So this is what we talk about continuous integration. This is what we talk about continuous deployment, right? So I've said gulp to keep watching. Not only that, I can now go into app.js, sorry, not app.js. I can go into 1.js, and then I can add one more console.log. Keep an eye out for the command window here, and then I'll go add one more. This is another log statement, and there you go. It ran a JS task, right? I can now come back and then do an F5, right? So lastly, what I will do is, this is fine, but I have to manually keep on refreshing the web page, right? I don't want to do that. The moment I make it change here, I want the web page to automatically refresh it. So for that, what we will need to do is we'll need to use a particular plugin called as, let me close out all these things. We are completely ran out of time. Sorry about that, but I'll quickly show you this. So there is a plugin called as Browser Sync. Uh, okay, it's known as Gulp Browser Sync, maybe. Hang on, I'm gonna figure out what was the name for that. Oh, it's an npm module, so not the plugin module. So sorry about that. So this is, let me stop this guy, and I will have to say like npm install. I think this is Browser Sync. So let me go back to the package.json, that what we have, and I'll quickly add this up. So there is a npm node module called as Browser Sync. There you go. And I'm just saying, I need that as part of this, right? So now it's going to go ahead and then install it. So what Browser Sync allows me to do is, it will automatically sync all the changes onto your browser, whatever, not only browser, if you have a mobile device connected to your localhost, if you have a tablet connected to your localhost, and then so it runs a server and then keeps on looking for any other clients which are connected to that particular server, and when you make a change, it will automatically go and then reflect that changes to everybody, right? So there's one more task that I need to write, that is HTML. If there is any changes to the HTML, I need that also to be picked up, right? So what I will do is, I'm going to quickly come back here and then add a HTML task. Notice here, all I've done is I just said gulp.src look for HTML, and then don't worry about that reload. I'm going to add that reload concept here. So first we need a browser link. Sorry, the browser sync. So I'm saying give me the browser sync, and it has a reload method. So I'm taking that reload. Now wherever we have a changes, we should call the reload pipe reload, and it has a syntax called as stream is equal to true, right? So just bear with me for another 5 minutes. This is a cool demo. This is fantastically done, this particular whatever. So I'm saying, anytime there's a CSS less change, there is a SASS change, there is a JavaScript change, or there is a HTML change, I want you to call this, right? So that is all I'm doing here. And then we will need to write a task called as browser sync. So all you do is you say gulp.task browser sync. I'm saying, like, the base directory for the server. So what browser sync does is it starts its own server on a very specific port, and it runs this particular application as a web application. So I'm saying use the base directory, which is dot, and then I have SASS this one, I'll say HTML, and I will have to say browser sync. Right? And of course the watch will always be there, and in the watch we will have to put for HTML also. What if there is a change in the HTML, I need it to pick it up, right? So let me go over that. What I did, I have installed browser sync node module, so, and I've included that into the gulp file, and I taken a reload reference. Then wherever there is a change that I detect, that is there is a change in the SASS file, I'll call the reload. If there is a change in the less file, I'll call the reload. If there is a change in the JS, I'll call the reload. Similarly for HTML. Then I have written a browser sync task. What it does is it starts a server for the base directory, which is the current directory, and this is the watch task. And in the default task, what I've done is I've said SASS less scripts HTML browser syncs watch. Finally, keep watching it, right? So that is all I've done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say gulp. If everything works well, what it will do is it will start a browser sync will start a browser. So there you go. It is now, oh, boom. So I got my, here it is. Take a look at this. This is now running inside localhost 3000, right? Now let me show the fun now. So I have this on the left hand side. I have my HTML file. I'm going to open up index.html. Do you see on the right hand side? It is doing now a build, and then there I go. I got the updated page, right? I can come back here. I can do an H5 now, and then I can say, okay, let me do an H5. This is way cool. And on the right hand side, I do not have to do anything. Gulp is maintaining everything for me. Well, I don't like the H5 using a primary color, so let me go into the SASS file. Not this one, this guy. And then I don't like the H5 using a primary color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say secondary color, and let's give it dark green, right? And I'm going to come back here and then I say, like, H5, it should use a secondary color. Boom, on the right hand side, the moment I click on save on my SASS file, the right hand side just refreshes that, and then the whole web page is refreshed, and then I see the updated stuff, right? So basically what I just showed you was this is how you will need to build your front end build systems, right? Let the task runners, let the build system automate things for you. You do not have to handle it manually every time. If any of you are doing these things manually, stop it. Go get into this build system and then automate it. The moment you click on save, you saw what is happening. Let's assume somebody comes in, let's say somebody comes in to the project as a new guy. All he has to do is he has to just say npm install. That npm goes and then gets all the dependency, and then all you need to do is go and then say gulp. There you go. The moment you start coding, all you need to do is just say gulp, and you get your browser starting up, and then the browser is going to be now listening for any changes. It says connected to browser sync. Well, you just start coding. You want to change any of the JavaScript files? So let me show this. So let me have the console opened up, and then I'm going to come back here and then say, I'm going to say, like, where greeting is equal to hello world. And notice what happens on the right hand side the moment I click on the JavaScript file. Well, there is a it just reloaded my file, and then where did our console go? Oh, I just created the variable. I have not output this. So maybe you are doing an output somewhere, right? I can say greeting, and then I click on save, and notice here I will have a greeting here somewhere. Huh? What happened? This one.js. Okay, let me force. Huh, this greeting is not coming. Oh, I console.log hello world greeting. Well, anyway, I think I don't know what is happening, but I understand. I hope you understand what Gulp is giving you in terms of all these things. Now, coming back to Grunt, very similar to Gulp, but only change is I showed you. I showed you kind of a coding, right? Let's say you're not a coding guy, you don't like to do a code. So what you can do is you can get into Grunt, and then Grunt gives you completely different mechanism. What is it? It's all configuration. Take a look at this. Remember I wrote pipe and then uglify? Grunt, all it says is, hey, just configure it. What is it? You want me to uglify? From where? What is the source? What is the destination? And then you just say register task default uglify. So um, somebody is saying the greeting was coming on the console. Thank you very much. I don't know where I saw, but I missed it. But the point I'm trying to make is Gulp and Grunt, they help you do the same stuff, but it's different flavors, right? So Grunt is all about configuration like this. As you can see here, it says uglify. What are the options? The banner is like this, and then build. So what is that source file that you need to pick up? Pick up any source file from package name, and then convert that into so-and-so minified.js file at a so-and-so location. So like this, it is going to do a lot of things here. It allows you the same things. So if you see here, configuring tasks, or sorry, let's go to creating tasks. So these guys will have as you know some examples here. So if you see here grunt.log, grunt.register task, grunt.run bar bash. So this is the task that they have written, and then you're running that task, and it's all configuration that you do in the grunt. So I hope you are getting the point. We are running out of time, but I hope I gave you some sort of getting started with these task runners, getting started with this build system, and you understood the gulp way of doing things. For me, I've been doing programming for 15 years, so grunt does not fly with me because of the configuration over code. Gulp is so easy to understand for me because I'm a developer, I'm a programmer, so programming is what comes natural to me, and then gulp, I just can understand so easily what the gulp is doing. So I like gulp. You may like grunt because you don't want to write code, you just want to configure, so it's up to you, but both of them let you do the same thing. For gulp, we did a gulp file.js. For the grunt, you will have to do a grunt file.js and then start using it. That's it. And for those of you who are coming from Microsoft world, you don't have to run this command line within your Visual Studio. Visual Studio has this cool feature of task runner. Let me see if I can get that. So if, yeah, the task runner explorer. So if you notice here, this allows you to, this will automatically figure out any gulp file.js if it is there in your project, and then it will showcase that, and then it will parse that file and then show you what are the different tasks that particular gulp file has, and then it will show that. Notice on the right hand side we have bindings, meaning I can take a particular task and say like, hey, this task needs to be binded to before build. This task needs to be binded to after build. This task needs to be bound to clean. Every time I do a clean, run this gulp task. Every time I open a project, run this gulp task. So you have this kind of nice visual stuff inside Visual Studio. But if you're coming from the command line world or the open source world, you always have the command line things for the gulp CLI. That's all I had for today. So basically, I just wanted to give my perspective of how I understood this build system, how I understood these task runners, and hopefully you got to learn something new today, and then your 1 hour was well spent. And we look forward to your future presence in our future webinars. Go to telerichelper.net, and we have the the schedule put up for January and February 2016. So take a look at that, register, and then we look forward to your presence in our future webinars. So I'm going to stop recording now and get into Q&A. So